For years, people have had their chance to tell their side of the story. And now it's my turn. And now that everybody's on the record telling their side of the story, somebody needs to be able to connect all the dots with all that evidence that is the irrefutable statement of what actually transpired between me and the McMahons while I had my career in the WWF.
Welcome to the next century of wrestling news, commentary, and entertainment, presenting the truth to expose the lies and show you the full context of wrestling, because there's two sides for many of these situations. Each episode of the Ultimate Responses series features content you won't hear anywhere else, so thank you for listening. This episode is brought to you by the Next Century Wrestling Store, your source for Warrior art, canvas prints, and posters. Clothing, shirts or hats, mugs, and more. Plus, a percentage of sale revenue from every purchase goes to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So you can show your warrior spirit, get some awesome stuff you've been waiting years to own, and support kids who need help now. Click our link on this page to feel the power and see what's in store for you.
Jim Elway used the wrestling business. It was a means to an end. Some of the first few matches he had, he was in the ring with me, and I was leading him around by his nose.
Ted DiBiase is a huge phony, liar, a hypocrite, and a thief. You know it, we know it, and most of the internet knows it. When he's not busy ripping off churches or the government, he's pretending to be in a position to preach about how we all need to be nicer to people. However, at the same time, he's spreading lies as he relentlessly attacks former wrestlers to compensate for his insecurities or bitterness that stems from his mediocre career. Sound familiar? Yes, that pattern is the same for most of the haters, so of course, Warrior is the target. And in a few minutes, you will hear Warrior completely obliterate Ted. But to set that up, here is a series of exchanges that gives you the full context of some of the lies. We begin with what the $1 million scammer said about how successful Warrior was.
From a business point of view, I understood. From a personal point of view, it made me sick. Absolutely sick for one reason. I knew he didn't appreciate it.
People ask me, Warrior, or they say, he doesn't appreciate the business, he doesn't respect the business. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about the business. The business, that gear bag that I built here, it didn't just give me what I need to make a match work. It gave me everything I needed to make my life work.
I just didn't see a guy that appreciated what he was given.
I've said it many times. The reason why me and Steve got the chance we did to continue in the business, even though we were greener than green, is because we had manners and we minded them, and we treated the guys who'd been in the business with respect, that we appreciated that they let us in to their business to give it a try. And I appreciate that so much. I appreciate that.
And he's thanked me. Warrior has actually been one of the few people who said, thank you so much.
It's hard to like somebody that is not interested in being a part of the troop. And that was him.
And aside from, the details of specific stories or events that are told in the DVD, there's a lot of discussion about that. I wasn't welcome in the locker rooms. I wasn't one of the boys. I was an a-hole to everybody, and those kind of things. When I saw the DVD, they make me angry and they piss me off, but they also broke my heart. It really did, because in the business, when somebody comes in, as they would, new guys would come in. Every 3 weeks we did television, and they would come in for a tryout or something. If they didn't have the kind of personality to cut it amongst the boys, they weren't around very long.
When you're having to work with them and trying to do business with a guy who's not really interested in you, he's just interested in himself, and that's who he was.
Warrior was not selfish, and he went out of his way to encourage and to help many other wrestlers.
I was complimentary of Goldberg, and matter of fact, the first night I was at WCW, I pulled Diamond Dallas Page and Goldberg aside, and I said that they had inspired me in my training to make a comeback because of their intensity. I told Goldberg, I wrote about it on one of my posts one time. When I was at WCW, I talked to him a few times when he was caught up in what the head games that Nash and Hall and Hogan and all those guys were playing, the big soap opera of it. And I told him, I said, look, man, I said, you have the potential to do incredible things in this business if you just keep your head on straight and don't get into all the mind games and the head games. Now, who somebody else is going to do that? Right. In my shoes? Nobody. Not in this business. No, not in this business. And that's exactly what they were doing. They were effing with his head because they knew he had skills. They knew he had talent. They knew he could do something. And they didn't want him to just focus on that. They wanted him to mess with his head, throw a little bit in the mix. And that's what the business is about in a lot of ways. Vince was always good about that. It wasn't just do your job and be productive and we'll leave you alone. It was always throwing something into the mix, to mess it up. They spend just as much energy. I mean, there's a lot of those guys in this business and all kinds of business, but they spend just as much energy in how to be destructive. Probably more energy on that than they do about how to be constructive and use their own abundant skills that they have.
Jim was for Jim, for the most part.
I liked Mark. He was a good guy. And then we did the angle. And then the first town we worked was Albany, New York, I think. And the people really got behind the Undertaker gimmick. Yeah, it was creatively stimulating because he was new. And he was, the thing was to work the match but get him over. Build him up as a talent. And I wasn't, as I've never been envious or jealous. I mean, I was in a position really to probably work the match in a way or give advice about how we set up the match where it wouldn't have been too beneficial to his character continuing to grow and build. But I was energized by saying, well, we got this thing that people like, so we got to work a match where Ultimate Warrior keeps his over prominence, keeps his babyface prominence. But at the same time, I think that we should engage your character. They were in the business as the Road Warriors and just incredible success and made a huge impact on the business way before we got in it. They painted their face. They were using the concept as Warrior. But when they came in, I was already established up at WWF. And I didn't push it in their face. Right. I had respect for them because I'd watched them when I first got in the business. And we both let one another do our warrior things. Like in interviews and stuff. I would put them over for how incredible I thought they were. How Ultimate Warrior would act like how incredible he thought they were. And they would put Ultimate Warrior over.
He looked great. They'd play his music. He'd run to the ring. He'd run around the ring. He'd shake the ropes. And the show was over. Because everything that happened from then was it was the same. If you've seen it once, you've seen it.
Because the purpose is to minimize Warrior and how exciting his matches were, Ted is usually careful not to mention that most wrestling fans wanted to see those matches, which is why Warrior was so successful. But you wouldn't understand that, Ted. So here's some context for you. The WWE recently released their official list of the 50 greatest WrestleMania matches ever. And as you can see, 2 of Warrior's matches were on that list. His match with Savage made the top 10. How many matches of yours were on the list, Ted? 0. So if you were such an expert in the ring, why aren't any of your matches up there? It's easy to see why. Nobody gave a damn if you were on the card or not. The two pay-per-view main events you were in had to have Hogan, Savage, and Andre in them because you couldn't draw a dime. So you can continue to lie about Warrior all you want, but those lies won't stop people from enjoying Warrior's matches now or from supporting how awesome he made them.
You couldn't tell him anything.
I was just a young kid. I was only 30 when I wrestled Hulk at WrestleMania 6, and I was just doing the best that I could, and I was doing pretty damn good.
In 2010, Warrior and the WWE were trying to work out a new deal for Warrior to return to the company, so fans were hopeful he would enter the Hall of Fame that year. However, Ted DiBiase was announced. Well, naturally, fans were disappointed, so DiBiase tried to retaliate with some more cheap shots against Warrior, who in turn wrote an epic post for his website to reply to that criticism and to also call Ted out for everything. Here is that post, the Warrior response for this episode.
Your hatred for me is palpable. When you talk about me, you swell up with it. Trust me, there's a measurable increase in bloat. On the Self-Destruction DVD, no one showed more a face of hatred than you. There's one particular moment where it practically oozes off the screen, and yet you claim to live by beliefs that allow for no hatred of any man. In fact, you do more than that. You make your living preaching this belief to others. What it all really boils down to is jealousy, envy. I did better in the business than you, walked away from it on my own terms, with my integrity intact, and I've done better in my life away from it. On the physical level alone, let's be serious, you were an undisciplined fat tub of shit when you were in the business, and you are a more undisciplined, even fatter tub of shit now. Any man who has cellulite on the back of their thighs, as you did even in your best days in the business, is a fat tub of shit. Period. Vince did not consult with you about extending an HOF invitation to me. You attempt to create the impression you had say-so or input. You didn't. Stop with the self-importance and quit trying to fool others with it. Vince doesn't ask or care what your opinion is about anything. The HOF event is for the fans. They buy the tickets. They have every right to criticize the event if they felt it was not the caliber of Hall of Fame there has been in previous years. Your induction didn't impress or excite them, and they spoke their minds about it. Get over it. Bashing them only makes you more an ass. You say the only time I had a great match was when someone was leading me around by the nose. Once and for all, let's stop the shit and put things in no uncertain terms. Without guys like me, Ted DiBiase, you never would have worked a main event match in the WWF. You were so smart about the business, Teddy, you were too stupid to figure out how it really works. Guys like you funded petty cash. Guys like me and Hogan and Savage at the time paid the mortgages and the travel bills and the production costs of the whole operation. I earned my limousine. Yours was provided as part of your silly gimmick. Reality check. My quarterly royalty checks were for more money than you made in a whole year. It was never about who could draw money with a guy like you. It was always about who could draw money with a guy like me. Guys like you were one of many. Guys like me were one of a kind. It's interesting, for being such a ring general as you fancy yourself to be, there's no list of all-time great matches with your name or gimmick on it. Not anywhere. Ultimate Warrior shows up more than once on quite a few. The lies don't fit with the facts. I worked on 3 different occasions with Vince, and he tried a 4th time in 1998 to get me to return by sending me a fax in the middle of the night, in the middle of our first litigation, that offered me a contract for more money than he was paying any other talent at the time. Vince is a pretty intelligent guy, a creative guy, a guy who doesn't put up with shit. Back then, he didn't need to monkey with talent that had to be led around by the nose. Back then, talent who couldn't lead themselves, literally in all ways, didn't make it to the top in the WWF. It wasn't like today, where they babysit a guy from the camps all the way to the championship belt. When you claim that I had to be led around by the nose, all you do is disrespect your own abilities, the other veteran talent you admire, and the business you seemingly hold in such high esteem. All you do is make the business overall look like a joke. Like anyone, any idiot without any skills whatsoever can make it to the top in the business. Truth is, it was I that led you all around by the nose. In fact, I might be the best damn worker the business ever had in its whole history. Hell, I should get an induction into the HOF just for this alone. Ultimate Warrior can get his own separate induction later. I worked circles around the work of the business so well, I succeeded at a greater level than any one of you could even dream of. Not bad for a guy who wasn't born and raised in the business and had only 10 hours of training before I set foot in a ring. Instead of being bitter about it, Teddy, you should be embarrassed. If you have to lie to make yourself feel better about your own failings as a sports entertainer and a man, then I guess that's what you have to do. I hate to see it. I'm sure it's not easy to accept the fact that in your life you failed in so many ways, most importantly, at being or becoming a man. Different than you claim, I appreciate plenty of what the business has done for me. I appreciate the opportunity Vince and his organization gave me, and I'm on the record many times over the years saying so. Even when criticizing Vince's vindictive attempt to rewrite history and defame both my personal and professional reputation, even while fighting for years through the legal system at huge financial and emotional expense, I have never withheld expressing my appreciation for certain things about my time with WWF. When you view the whole picture of what transpired between Vince and I, it is obvious that it is Vince who has refused to put appreciation in its proper perspective. My success in the WWF was a two-way street. It is for everyone who works in the WWE today. Vince provided his contribution, yes. It was incredibly valuable. But so was mine. To say my one-of-a-kind contribution was not of at least equal value is going way too far. Yes, Vince certainly deserves credit, but I am certainly due mine, as is any other talent that works for him. Vince shouldered a heavy burden to build up his business, and that all by itself is something to admire and be inspired by. But the busted ass and backs of the talent built the foundation of that company. Without the talent, the company would not exist. The size of Vince's business dreams and his labors alone did not make the company the success it is today. Vince has a tendency to forget that, and anybody who has ever worked for him knows he spends a lot of effort trying to make the world believe otherwise. The Self-Destruction DVD was his greatest attempt to force this skewed view of himself and his power down the throats of the people, the fans he claims to care so much about, who have subsidized all the wealth he possesses today. In the DVD, talent do not parse their words. Almost all of you to a person imply that I owe Vince for everything that I have in my life and everything I am. To put it mildly, that's outrageous. I had a life filled with the pursuit of goals long before I ever met Vince McMahon. And when I worked for him, in the simplest of terms, we had a basic goods and services for compensation contractual agreement between us. Nowhere in any of my contracts is there anything about either of us forever owing one another anything beyond the terms of the agreement. There is nothing in any contract I ever had with Vince that says I must continue to work there when mistreated, or believe the terms of my contract were violated, or must always hold a positive opinion about their programming, or have to agree to be in the HOF simply because I worked there, or owe him or his company my loyalty forever. I've never heard you say you owe all your life success to Vince, have you? Your good old school buddies, have they? Do they say, I wouldn't be anything or anywhere in my life if not for Vince and what he did for me? No, none of them. You don't either. In fact, whenever any of you old-timers and the new guys over the recent years leave and go work somewhere else, you all immediately trash Vince and his company like they contributed nothing at all to who you are and where you are in your wrestling career, let alone your overall life. On a deeper level, a level you don't have the mental or spiritual capacity to understand, I actually appreciate what was done for me in the business more than any of you who worked there at the same time I did. I paid serious attention to my experiences while I was there. I learned about more than achieving success in the sports entertainment business. I learned larger life lessons that have helped me succeed in my life beyond my time in the business. I learned that hard work, self-discipline, sacrifice, creativity, and belief in yourself pays. I learned that if you will give what it takes to not be denied, you won't be denied. And by the time I succeeded in the business, this lesson was so deeply affirmed and ingrained within me, I never lost sight of its power ever again. These are the virtues that make life work, no matter what challenges you face, no matter what goals or dreams you pursue. And when being in the business was no longer an option for me, I put them to work in the pursuit of other goals. Sadly, most of you expected success in the business should be based on who you knew, who you blew, how much ass you kissed, and how well you acted, two-faced, and stabbed others in the back. When it didn't work that way, you got angry, whined, and complained. but little good that did when the only audience you voiced your grievances to were the other do-nothing-about-it talent in the same predicament. More unfortunately, your focus on entitlement stifled your ability to learn the greater, empowering lessons your career in the WWF could teach you. You used the incredible opportunity of your success to become weaker. I used my opportunity to become stronger. You developed lazy, destructive, mindless habits. I developed greater hunger. When you were drowning your payoff sorrows in booze and swapping spit with filthy whores, I was in the gym at 2 and 3 in the morning, improving my body to make my gimmick even better. When you were passed out, I was writing down ideas to discuss with Vince to make my gimmick the best it could be. When you were hungover and dragging ass in the morning after a night of debauchery, I woke up inspired by the challenge to kick the ass of another day, even after only 2 to 3 hours of sleep and another lousy can of tuna. You grew lazier, softer, less confident, and less creative during your run. I grew bolder, harder, more brazen, more imaginative. You let the business beat you down. I used the hard work, challenges, struggles, and obstacles to empower myself. I saw the business for what it was. I succeeded on the terms it offered at the time. I kept its history and reputation of how it treated talent at the forefront of my mind at all times, and I prepared for the day I might have to make my life work without it. When it came, I was ready. It's not my fault you weren't. Truth is, Vince let us all know up front that he would try to get every single bit of juice out of you, the talent, personally and professionally. It's the nature of the business, and the writing is on all the walls the whole time. Vince makes it clear from the start he's going to get it all, every single drop, even if he has to F you to do it. Out of fear of growing into a greater, better man, moving on in your life and going it alone, doing the work, engaging the self-belief and self-discipline to make your life work at something different than pro wrestling, you allowed the business to own you, body, mind, and soul, not to prosper, just to survive. Your character as one of the boys was more important to you than your character as a man. And so it has gone on. Over the years, you've continued to compromise and weaken your integrity to a degree, Teddy, that it no longer even has a pulse. You know it, and you know everyone else knows it too. Behind the gimmicks, you were all studs, real tough guys. But without them and the lights and production and business and the angles and the money and all the smack talk to back you up, you never possessed the big balls it takes to step into the ring with the main event of life.
Warrior has written some truly classic posts, and we are now in the process of transposing them to voice as well. We hope to have more of those for you in some upcoming shows, so stay tuned for that. We are also preparing to launch the Next Century Wrestling website soon to give you access to even more new Warrior content. So please subscribe to this channel now to be a part of it all so that you know exactly when everything happens. And we appreciate how many of you post comments because it's awesome to connect with you this way, and we like to hear your requests for show topics as we want to know what you like to see. We also have to say the comments supporting Warrior outnumber the hate posts, so it's not even close. And those comments themselves prove the Warrior fans are much smarter, stronger, and now that we are connected through this channel, we are even more powerful than ever. So if you have any questions about anything, feel free to email us anytime. Also, hit share if you can. Remember to get some new merchandise. Thank you so much for listening. We are always here to entertain you. We are Next Century Wrestling.